everyone. Welcome to this beautiful in-between. We've got two incredible people here to talk about their brand new project. Not new for them, they've been working on it for a while. But I would love for you guys to introduce yourselves and also tell me a bit about the mission on this film.
Go Farron.
Oh, well, I'm Farron Pearl. I'm the co-director of the movie.
And I'm Kirk D'Amico, the director of the movie.
Yeah. And I think our mission was that we wanted to tell this story of a girl who was, I think a girl who, honestly, it's about her, but it's more of a universal feeling of feeling as if you have something that's different about you, that's something that makes you feel even less than ordinary. And that's something you could draw power from, and that's something that actually makes you extraordinary. I think that's kind of the message for me.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. Nothing to add.
I mean, yeah, I like when Farron says it.
Yeah.
It makes me happy.
That's interesting because, as far as I'm aware, and you guys can correct me, this is the first female-led narrative. Yeah, digital narrative. So what was the process behind developing that? We start at the start. Let's get right to the first domino.
All right, the first domino. Well, actually, when Farron and I came on, the film was still centered largely around the family of the Gillmans, that were a family of Krakens hiding on land. And there was a big what-if idea right from the get-go of that, which was what we loved most was this idea that, you got Krakens who have long been portrayed as the destroyers of man and sinkers of ships and, bringing people down to their watery graves. And so the question really is, well, what if maybe they were just victims of a terrible PR crisis, and and it's 2023. Shouldn't we challenge the assumptions?
Yeah.
So we were like, yeah, this is a really fun arena to play with, and the idea that driving that through a teenager's experience, because we all have that experience in teenagedom, more than mostly relatable, is that time of feeling like a monster when you're hiding, when you're not sure of your identity, when you're trying to, even if it's just quirks that you're trying to cover up. And so this girl, Ruby, is really feeling the weight of that at the top of the film, and she's just doing her best to fit in with the world. And we love the idea of this journey for her, that as she progresses through, it's not just about her fitting in, it's about her belonging. And it's about her coming to share all of her powers and all of who she is with her friends and her family and her town and the world around her.
And how do you do that then? That's a good question.
Farron
because
does that. No.
Wait a minute.
Yeah, wait a minute.
Yeah, hold on. Yeah. Pass the microphone. Yeah.
I mean, we do start with like this very grounded kind of mundane school, life, and this mundane family, even though they all happen to be blue sea monsters living on land. And I think we kind of marry it with this grand scale. In the end, this movie does become this huge kaiju battle. And it's kind of right. But it does feel like a little bit of, obviously a metaphor. The story does reflect this journey that I think anyone could feel like they could be on, of feeling like, you have to hide, you have to stay small. When in reality, kind of what makes you special makes you big, can let you take up space. And Ruby literally takes up 300 feet of space. So she takes up a lot of space by the end. It really just felt like a kind of perfect marriage between, again, this universal feeling that we had a lot of people in our crew tell us about, like how they felt different, how they felt somewhat nervous and scared about this difference of theirs, be it their identity or, maybe their cultural background, and really finding later on in life, usually, that it was really something that kind of, made them be able to fight titans in the water, So I think we went through there, kind of letting the character story guide us through the actual beats of the plot itself,
I think it's a really nice universal message that you've hit on there, actually. And I think even watching it, I was excited to see where the story goes. And I'm not usually like that, as a journalist in animation, you just watch things. But there's something about it where I was like rooting for her, which is rare. I'm usually like an observant, like, I wonder about this. But I think there's just something so nice about a story that plays with scale to that degree.
Yeah.
The large inner journey and the kind of small world around you, and how it kind of battles against the two. So I found that really fascinating. There's no question there. I just wanted to compliment you
Thank
guys.
you.
That was really a big thing we kept on, and our, like, even in the production design, Pierre Olivier Vincent, when we were designing the film, was this idea of constantly putting almost bookended the mundane and the epic, looking at what it would be, because she's such a genuine, warm-hearted character that you do want to root for her, but rooting for her in a relatable space, which is a girl in her room with her hoodie on, just trying to get to school and maybe get past her mom to try to ask the boy to prom, is like there. And then having us be on the journey with her when she's expanding her universe, when she's exploring the world and she's discovering that she's made for greater things, which is a line that Jane Fonda delivers straight to her in the middle. And it feels, and the part where you're talking about, I think, is really cool, because the other thing that we really tried to focus on is she's just, and even in the animation and the ways, the way she's been performed, and Lana Condor's performance, she's one of the most appealing characters.
Very appealing.
And we really wanted her, she is a very appealing character stuck between very strong women, amazingly strong women. Her mom, played by Toni Collette, Jane Fonda's grandmama, her best friend Margot, played by Liza Koshy, and Annie Murphy playing Chelsea. And she's this girl who's being told, a lot of people have a lot of ideas how she should be living her life. And this journey she goes on is figuring out how she wants to. And I feel like that, because her heart's in the right place in every frame of the film, she has no ulterior motive. And she's so empathetic to her friends and everyone around her. I think that was really the sweet spot that we, working with the animators and with Lana, we were love that you're saying that, because that was really the goal in an idea about, this coming of age story. You want to root for, her to take up, the mantle.
And I think that's it, really, because it's like the sincerity is a superpower to a degree in that sense. And you obviously, metaphorically, becomes one, and, when she becomes a Kraken and uncovers her powers and everything. You mentioned briefly the production design of this. Okay, let's dive right into that. Let's talk about that. Yeah. What have you got for me in terms of the start?
Well, I mean, to talk off what you were saying, a lot of what we did was about contrast.
Okay.
Because Ruby is going to be pressed between two worlds, right? And so we have, POV did this, Pierre Olivier Vincent, did this incredible thing
POV,
where...
wow.
That's what we call him, POV. But he was... POV's POV was that we should really lean into the contrast of her worlds. So you have her life on land in Oceanside, and we kind of needed, for story purposes, for it to be a place where a sea creature could potentially live, where you could feel like they could survive, but somewhere that still felt like kind of small and cramped. But it is still a place where a blue girl could blend in. He took a lot of inspiration from coral reefs. It's a very colorful world, including all the human characters, but it's all very different. It's actually, if you look at the design, it's all very angular, very stiff shapes, and even the way the humans moved, which is, a lot thanks to our animation team with, headed by Carlos Portolas, they're very stiff and robotic, still able to move, but so different than the Gilmans. And then when you go under the ocean, everything's big and curvy and organic. Organic, right. It really, you kind of see when she goes in the ocean, and she sees it too. Oh, this is a place that I'm built for. This is a place where I don't have to hide. I can just be. But she has a lot of love on land, so we really want to show, there are reasons she's tied to it, but she has to kind of choose between these two so different worlds. Yeah.
The choice, because you could almost call it rubber hosing, the way that they're moving in the ocean, that kind of style. Sorry, you were going to say.
No, I was going to say that's it really opportunity, like those principles of squash and stretch, for a comedic, but also it was organic and because of the idea coming from cephalopods and the curviness of how they act, it wasn't a boneless character. It was part of what it was, and since it was her, it really was her straitjacket in a way, because she was meant to be more curvy, meant to be more flowy, and her mom had her more rigid, had her more walking like she had a spine, which she didn't have. So to see her get into the ocean for the first time and release herself, and to be able to be free and be held up by all this water, the gravity is isn't pulling her down.
Yeah.
And we play that opposite with her uncle. The first time he comes to town, the first time he's on land, he's a mess. He's a blubbering mess. And I really think that that's really the key for us was, I think that superpower of animation is our ability to bend believability, different than live action when you have a lot of movies with a lot of animation in it, but our ability to bend believability, which meant setting up, as Farron was saying, setting up a world that felt like we could have this girl walk through it. And because the way it's stylized, how pushed it is, how everything's caricatured, but with a thought behind it, that it made it plausible. The verisimilitude of, yes, we understand she can get through. And so those kind of thought that goes through, through the art directors and then with the animation working in tandem, and then carried on, honestly, even into our visual effects. Dave Walvord, who worked on all How to Train Your Dragon movies, we definitely went for, especially with the water effects. There's beautiful shapes, even though they're massive. It feels beautiful. Like, even in the biggest fights, we wanted it to be beautiful because these weren't just three kaiju. They were three, kaiju women who were standing up there. And the other part we were talking about, like even that Kraken kingdom, which is organic and it has all these surfaces that are like glass and jade to refract light. We wanted to make it appealing to perhaps a teenage girl. So it couldn't have been just a scary castle where the tough grandmother lives, because we wanted that pull for Ruby. When she showed up, it wouldn't be just like, well, this is easy. I am not leaving here. I'm not living here. I'm out of here, right? Like, wanted this pull that there is a world under there, and it was something that was worth defending or, and living. So that was the thing that constantly coming back to, we'd be like, what's the teenage version of this? How does this apply to a teenager?
Well, let me ask you, how do you guys figure that out?
Yeah.
We're not teenagers, unfortunately.
Right.
Well, I mean,
we were.
Emotionally.
I might be.
Never went past it. Yeah. It's still stuck there. But how do you figure that out? Are you connecting to your own experiences, or?
Yeah, you want to go?
I mean, part of the reason I really always loved this project from day one is that I feel like in Ruby, although she's a sea monster, she really is a very grounded character. She's someone who, and I think in a lot of ways she's our biggest victory, because again, she's sincere, but she can be a little goofy and she can make mistakes, and she's still, even through her physicality, finding her own way, finding her way of moving through the world. And I mean, for me, it absolutely reminds me of me still. I would argue that it's a journey that I don't know if everyone's finished, finding the power within them to figure out what makes them kind of big in the world, because I think it's in everyone. I think what I love about what you said about, she has a big heart and this sincerity throughout it is we always wanted to make sure that it was clear from the beginning. Ruby always had what was needed of her. Even when she didn't know it or didn't see it, it was that same kind of heart, the same kind of love of her family, her friends, this empathy. That's really what was going to guide her towards the end. We always wanted to make sure that it was clear that she always had it,
Exactly. I would say, it's like, we finding what that is. It's like, 2 weeks out from releasing an original animated movie in the middle of the summer. I don't know anything about Insecurity. Let's just put it that way. I can't relate.
Yeah.
I don't know what that feels like. I don't know. It must be nice, right?
Whoa, you've turned into a giant Kraken out there, in the lake. Yeah.
No, I think that's what's so appealing, to me in any story, is that, and as a father of boy-girl twins who are 10 years old and going through, I feel like those kind of stories of an underdog who is feeling those, and when they're built into the metaphor, as we're saying, it's part of it, and it has room to express it visually, makes what the fun of the animation, because all of the things that she would be stepping through in her life and going through, we would find really fun visual ideas, and then challenge the art department and challenge the animators to because we learned very early on the scale, as you pointed right from the beginning. What that meant was also we had to make challenges big enough for a Kraken, because usually they're the slate wiping end of a film. They just show up, boom, done, everything over.
Yeah.
So what do you do to challenge her? And so there was lots of invention that came from the artists, where we hid the trident in the second act, a set piece that was, bigger than we all, had ever imagined at the start of this, and certain things that we did to test her. Because that's our job, is to put our characters through the ringer, and and so that was really a fun kind of challenge for all the departments. And as you said, they too felt her, loved her, and rooted for her. But at the same time, it's our job to make it life tough on her.
Yeah. Otherwise, it's not rewarding. If it's just a movie you watch, everything's going great.
Yeah, no, it's going great. And the other part of that, the reward thing too, was also us making sure that she put in the work. It was very important to us that she earned her right to stand up against. It wasn't just because she had the power, right? It had to be also training, but also accepting of it. There were levels to what it was that she put in the work.
I'm curious then, you mentioned challenges, right? So, narrative aside, let's talk about challenges that you guys might have had making this movie, because I can't imagine it would have been easy, especially you've got an underwater world, there's a lot of technical challenges going on in there, and then you have to flip between these two so smoothly, Could you break that down a little bit more for me?
Original movie, not one world, two worlds.
Two worlds,
okay,
yeah.
And one world is very neon, crazy colors,
Yeah, I mean, we had a lot of challenges as Kirk, just because original property where, it's a premise that we need the audience to buy into right away, because it's not the premise is not even the beginning of the secrets and the surprises that unfold. And technically, I mean, I think one of the biggest challenges, again, to drive back to Ruby, was figuring out what does a Kraken look like, and how do we make a Kraken? How do we make a teenage Kraken? How do we make one appealing? And make one appealing. And on every single level, we had obviously our crew really helped put us together. So like on the Kraken, from the early designs, we needed to figure out what is a Kraken, what does the general audience know from that, and how do we also marry it with all these properties that make her, and how do we make it something appealing and beautiful and aspirational. We really wanted to make sure that this thing that could be monstrous is something that maybe you actually want to be, and finding that world that fit around her. I'm starting to get overwhelmed with how to tell you all this, because essentially there was a lot to
tell me everything.
Well, there was a lot to figure out. We really, creating the world of the underwater kingdom. What we knew is that we've seen a lot of underwater worlds, and we wanted to make one that felt not just new but somewhat mythical. We wanted to make it feel like this isn't just the underwater world that you could go like snorkeling in. This is the underwater world of the Krakens, of the legends, and kind of creating the look of that. I think POV and the lighting team, especially the special effects team, really had to go through a lot of different ways to figure out how to do that while working with water, which is, I think in animation, one of the big no-nos. Don't do anything with water. Don't do anything with
ropes,
water. Water. Oh, we have ropes too.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. I mean, it's a water movie. I think one of I don't know if we could talk about the end too much, but
go for it. They need to know it all.
Yeah.
Give me everything. Exactly.
As seen in the trailer, one of my favorite parts is Chelsea's water hair at the very end, and that is a feat of special effects, of rigging, of fluid dynamics, ocean projection.
You've heard that word a lot.
Yeah.
I know it's great.
I know it's tough. Yeah.
It's tough and beautiful.
Yeah.
But we are making a movie where we had to think, how can we use this wisely? How can we use this to the best effect? And how can we make this look as good as it gets? And I think our that was just a technical. What's the hardest version of a challenge? Just a gauntlet. Gauntlet.
Yeah, gauntlet is a great one. Yeah.
But I think the work speaks for itself on screen. Yeah.
It was a challenge, but it's one of the fun ones, I think, for this, because it's because it is a movie about these generations of women. A teenager at the center, girl, was coming up with a soundscape, but with music. Especially, we really put a lot of care and feeding into finding sort of girl band rock kind of, soundtrack to be the soundtrack to Ruby's life and the film to tell the way through. And then we have a great composer, Stephanie Economo, who came on board and married all of those needle drops, whatever they are, 19 of them, whatever we have in the
Wow,
film,
yeah,
the two
yeah.
original songs,
Yeah.
married that with this amazingly epic, heroic score, but then has this sort of ethereal dreamscape, underwater pop kind of vibe that makes you feel like you're really having to escape. It's a beautiful kind of thing. And then bringing in even that John Hughes kind of sweetness, prom, awkwardness vibe to it all. So that was a challenge unique to us, I think, because of the characters and the world, that it gave us a chance to mark out a little piece of territory with the music and the score.
But that's so important as well. Like if I think back to my teenage years, music was a crucial component of that, So it's nice to see that you took it so seriously as like a connective tissue.
Yeah, and we had two, and we worked with Mimi Webb and Freya Ridings, and they wrote original songs and they were singing in the movie. And it's like their connection when we first would show or pitch things and hearing them, what they brought to the film. So yeah, it really had. It kept on. It really helped us define, again, to keep that teen spirit. So when there's kind of did that?
Smells like
Sounds
it.
like it.
Yeah.
That kaiju fight. It still felt like a moment of like a teen anthemic moment.
It's all stuff Ruby would listen to, I think.
Yeah,
We also wanted it to be like just a playlist
of contemporary songs.
Yeah, contemporary. Yeah.
So we've talked about creative process, technical challenges. Is there anything that you want people to get out of this movie when they see it? Like, what's the core value? You're like, we've put so much of this into it.
Yeah, you want to?
Thank you.
Whoa!
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Sorry. Let me ask that again. What would you like the audience to get out of this when they see it?
I mean, I think we've been talking a lot about Ruby's journey, and I think, again, what felt so special to me about this movie, and also not just with Ruby, but how she relates to her mother, her grandmother, these intergenerational, problems that come up again and again. What should I be? What am I supposed to be? And what do I want to be? I think I personally would love if people look at the story and go, oh, wow, there's, I get to choose. There's something in me, and there's not, there's nothing wrong with that. There's something really beautiful about what makes me different, I think.
Yeah, I would say, to add to that, as a parent, I would think the mother-daughter story, especially with as is played even between Toni Collette and Lana Condor, that idea that a mother is allowed to be entirely right but still be wrong, and understand that and take that on board, and for a daughter to see that her mother has been, doing everything she can to protect her. And what I found in this one we have is the scene between Grandma and Jane Fonda, that we bring that level, and Lana and Ruby through her heart brings these families together, and solves this rift that's been happening. And I feel like, again, to your number one thing you said, that sort of sincerity and open heart is, the way through.
Yeah. Well, children also usually seem to mend generational traumas somehow. Like they just absorb it and fix it, or just absorb it.
Amen to that.
Yeah. So good luck to your kids, man. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I hope your kids are okay. Yeah. But anyways, no, sorry. No, yeah. But no, thank you so much for your time, guys. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And just as a closing idea, I think something like Ruby story is important because the hardest thing in the world is to keep your heart open, and I think your film really proves that. It's difficult, sure, but it's very fulfilling, and it's the right way to go through. So it's an important message, I think, to give to people, especially teenagers or whatever age they are. It's like, okay, you're young, you're so playful. Teenager, you're just trying to fit in, you lose all that, and then as you get older, you try to find that playfulness again, So I love what you guys have done with this, so thank you so much.
Amazing.
Yeah,
Can you just say that to the camera for us,
well,
so we can just keep playing that?
Yeah.
That was perfect.
Yeah.
We'll say that
Well,
from now on.
Yeah.
I was like, that was beautiful. Thank you.
Write that down. It was on camera,
Okay,
I hope.
good.
Yeah. Thank you so much, guys. I'll let you go.